You know, the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation had various hits and misses. What's ironic about this episode, it has two Star Trek Wrath of Khan alumni in the cast, including Kirk's son, Merrick Buttrick, who played Kirk's son in the movie. Here he plays one of the main characters. Criticized quite a bit for its very unsubtle presentation. Now, we're talking about Symbiosis, which is actually Denise Crosby's last episode. She was killed off in the next episode, Skin of Evil, but filmed this after Skin of Evil. So there's a scene at the end where she's in the shuttle bay and she's waving off stage as the doors close. Not a good way for the end of her career because she felt she wasn't getting the right parts or presentation as Tasha. Now, this is the 22nd episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. Came out during Easter month, April 18th, 88. First aired again that season. It was, of course, broadcast syndication. There was a disclaimer on it on the Canadian syndicated viewings on CBC. The teleplay was written by Robert Lewin, Richard Manning, and Hans Beimler, based on a story by Lewin, and the episode was directed by Win Phelps. In this episode, Picard tries to mediate a trade dispute between two neighboring planets, one of which is the sole supplier of a drug to treat the other's apparently fatal disease, only to discover a far more sinister relationship is involved that he cannot interfere with. Now, this episode was written after executive producer Maurice Hurley worked on Miami Vice, which he credited for resulting in the drug trade theme in the episode. However, this was, paint by numbers. The guest cast, including Judson Scott, who was one of Khan's right-hand guys in Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, and of course the late great Mary Buttrick, who died of HIV infection and was killed off as Kirk's son in Star Trek 3. The episode, for many critics, where it wasn't hot, as it received mixed reviews with criticism directed at subject matter and the unsubtle nature of the presentation. Now, the Enterprise in this one attempts to rescue the freighter Sanction, which has been disabled by a star's magnetic field and is about to collide with a planet. An agreement is reached to transport over the crew to the freighter, but he surprisingly sent over cargo barrels first, which is the drugs. Now, the way it's played out, both the leaders of the Sanction seemed either too stoned or too stupid to know what's going on. Now, the Enterprise crew attempts to transport the freighter's crew, but is only successful in recovering 4 of them before their ship is destroyed. 2, Tijan, played by Buttrick, and Romas, played by Richard Lindback, are scruffy and unshaven, while the other 2, Sobai, Judson Scott, and Langor, Kimberly Farr, are groomed and well-dressed. They all show relief that the barrels made it over and little remorse for the lost ship and crewmen. The 2 groups start to fight over the ownership of the barrels, using electrical shock attack from their bodies, and are escorted to the observation lounge under guard. No, there was no reason why both groups had this lightning power a la the Chancellor in the Star Wars movies. Now, the 2 pairs eventually come from different planets. We find they come from 2 different planets with the same system. It is explained that the bearers contained Felicium, a medicine for a plague which was ravaging the planet Ornara. The medicine is produced on the planet Brekka, but the Ornarans are the only race in the system with the means of space travel. The 2 remaining Ornaran ships were built long ago and beginning to fail due to overuse and lack of maintenance. The Ornarans are no longer know how to repair them. Captain Picard offers to return them to Ornara and provide replacing parts for remaining freighters. The Brecken, Sobi, and Langor argued that they retain ownership of the Felicium, as the items the Ornarans offered in payment was lost on board the freighter. Tijan and Romas of Ornara are suffering from the effects of the plague and are sent to sickbay, where Dr. Crusher can find no reason for their symptoms. In a gesture of goodwill following demand and compassion from Crusher, the Breckons offer 2 doses of Felicium to Tijan and Romas's immediate needs. Langor explains the entire Brecken economy and industry is devoted to producing the medicine for Ornara, whose inhabitants provide Brekka with the necessities of daily life in return. After Tijan and Romas take their doses, and they're very happy to do it, Crusher realizes that Felicium is actually a highly addictive narcotic, and the plague itself was cured long before, so the symptoms believed to be attributed to the plague are actually withdrawal symptoms. Crusher wants to offer assistance to aid the Ornarans in breaking free of their addiction. but Picard warns that the Federation can intervene due to the Prime Directive. He and Crusher later questioned the Breckons alone and confirmed that the Breckons know the truth regarding the plague being eradicated, the addictive nature of the medicine, and exploiting the Ornarans because Brekka's economy would collapse if the Ornarans are no longer needed the drug, or Felicium. Now, the Enterprise then arrives at Ornara, and Sobe and Langor have agreed to provide the Felicium for Ornara to the Ornarans for a later payment. Picard announces that the Prime Directive prevents him from interfering in the transactions between the two planets, and also prevents him from providing any replacement parts for the aging freighters. Sobe and Langor, Tijan and Romas are furious at the decision, as it means that the trade between Ornara and Brekka will stop because the freighters can no longer make the trips without the parts. After Ford transported off the Enterprise, Picard confides to Dr. Crusher that while the Ornarans may suffer withdrawal symptoms in the short term, this will be an opportunity for both races to advance in their own ways. Now, the episode was influenced by Hurley's recent work on Miami Vice. It was intended to have the Enterprise come across a drug deal in progress. Hurley was also responsible for the insertion of a Just Say No style drug speech by Tash Yar to Wesley Crusher, which came over the objections from the cast. It's Nancy Reagan smelling terrible. Now, Hurley said regarding this speech, "I take the blame for that. I jammed that in over everyone's objections. They were screaming on the set. The actors were screaming. They were puking. They were yelling. We can't do this." I said, "No, there are kids out there. If we're going to make the message, let's make the message. If it offends the adults or bothers some kids, then by God, we're going to do it." It weakened the Crosby character, so her last big soliloquy on the show was this, Nancy Reagan bullshit presentation. Stopping drugs is not saying just say no. Stopping drugs is stopping the pushers. You can say no all you want, but if you want to get a quick stone, you can find it any place, and saying no is not going to take it away. Now, guest stars in this episode again, including the two actors as Sobe and Tijan, were played by Judson Scott and Merritt Buttrick, respectively. Now, when Buttrick appeared in Search for Spock, he had one of the most intense deaths in Star Trek history, as his David Marcus character was murdered. Now, Buttrick at the time was suffering from AIDS, was unable to afford health insurance, and was offered a role as a way of helping him. He died of AIDS less than a year after filming this episode. Now, director Phelps recalled there were numerous continuing issues throughout filming, with character motivations changing from one scene to the next. Because of these changes, the actors were often acting scenes they had not seen the script for before the first take. Symbiosis, again, was filmed after Skin of Evil, which featured the death of Tasha, making this the final filmed episode with Denise Crosby as Yar until she reappeared in the classic Yesterday's Enterprise. Towards the end of the episode, as Picard and Crusher leave the cargo bay, Crosby can be seen waving goodbye to the camera behind him at timestamp 42:15. She is clearly visible above Patrick Stewart's left shoulder as the bay doors close. Now, later, LeVar Burton later used behind-the-scenes footage from this episode in a feature on his show Reading Rainbow in the episode The Bunny Show. Now, when aired in broadcast syndication during the week of April 22nd, it received high Nielsen ratings, 10.8. This was the highest ratings received by the series since the broadcast of Too Short a Season during the previous February. The ratings received by Symbiosis were not beaten until the first episode of the second season, The Child, because a lot of people wanted to see when the Borg were going to be arriving. Now, first aired in syndication, several reviewers rewatched the episode at the end of the series, and according to Zach Hanlon of the AV Club in 2010, he felt that the drug use allegory could have been better refined, but praised the performance of Stewart and also gave the episode a grade of B. Now, Keith DeCandido of Tor.com described it as the least subtle message-based episode since the original series episode, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. He criticized the electricity-based powers of the two alien species, saying he did not add anything to the plot. He gave the episode a score of 4 out of 10. Now, James Hunt of Den of Geek said this is one of 3 episodes which exemplify all that is awful about Star Trek in general. I'm not talking about season 1 dubious production values, but about the episode's very fabric. The continuing issues because the characters weren't consistent. Now, there was a sequel to this in the Star Trek Lower Decks episode, Trusted Sources. The planets of these episodes were visited 17 years later by the USS Symbiosis as part of the Project Swing, under command of Captain Carol Freeman. Upon being briefed of Picard's actions, Freeman strongly disapproved of the idea of him subjecting a whole civilization to a sudden mass drug withdrawal without warning assistance. Upon landing, the away team learned that while the planet did endure an arduous period, it eventually recovered with a newfound focus on personal health and fitness. However, while the civilization was grateful for Picard freezing them from their exploitation, in principle, his methods permanently cooled relations with the United Federation of Planets. Upon visiting Brekka, the crew learned to its alarm that the planet was overrun by the hostile Breen, who would then attack the USS Symbiosis. Now, the first home media release of Symbiosis was on VHS in early '93, and it was included on the Season 1 DVD box set in 22, and of course 2002, and was part of the Blu-ray release on July 21st, 2012. Season 1, of course. Now, I rewatched the episode for this podcast, and Buttrick's performance is very strong. But for us that knew he was dying at the time, us in the media, because word was getting around, the big thing of the mid-90s, early 80s, late 80s, early 90s, people would find out quickly who was dying from HIV because with National Enquirer and all the tabloids. But Buttrick was always a good actor, and he was in Square Pegs as well. I think his passing was one of the biggest losses to the acting community in every shape or form, because he had that kind of West Coast surfer look, and he could have easily been, had a good extended Broadway career. He was that good. Reminded me a little bit of a blonde John Cusack. Very handsome guy, very, very well done. Now, Denise Crosby's Just Say No speech to Will Wheaton, try to bypass this. I'm diabetic, and I can't watch that. It's sugary like crazy. So, but ladies and gentlemen, the thing about Season 1, it's either very good episodes, very, very middling, and then very mediocre. So there's a lot of bottle episodes, Arsenal of Freedom as well, which doesn't make any sense. The one about the aliens in the sand and all that. So it's pretty freaky. So ladies and gentlemen, watch the episode for Merritt Buttrick's performance. And again, a very, very strong and beloved actor we all miss. And of course, our friend that played with Montalban and Star Trek Rother Khan. To see him in this is kind of jarring, because you know how to use it. You don't do it as much now. We use repeat actors in certain episodes. Everybody knows that Buttrick played Captain Kirk in the Star Trek movie, and 2 and 3, and knows that the other guy was in Wrath of Khan as well. It was kind of jarring because, it seemed like a paycheck episode for Buttrick. It was, because he needed health care, and I think that was a good thing to do, because he was a very strong actor. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you're doing here, we're Star Trek reviews. Let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share. Happy Thanksgiving to all our American listeners. Again, Detroit won the first game. Dallas is leading in the second game as we speak. Quite a shock. The first biggest lead he had at home this year. And don't forget, half of Canada are Dallas Cowboys fans. So for those not watching Star Trek in reruns, they're watching... like a lot of Canadians there, they watch science fiction for their Christmas or Canadian Thanksgiving program. It's with Chinese food. It's an old tradition. So they're keeping the tradition going. I watch Star Trek to do this podcast. By the way, I'm getting some criticism from certain people in the States for my Canadian accent. They said it's interfering with the enjoyment. And they're leaving posts. If you leave negative posts here, they're going to be banned, because no person who's running a business, this is what it is right now, YouTube is paying me, is going to allow people to come and criticize you, not because of the presentation, but because of your accent. I don't criticize American accents. Every accent to me is important. It presents the stuff well. But if you're taking time your day to criticize my American accent, leave it a comment, you have two options. Take down the comment. If you do keep it up, you will be banned and reported to YouTube. That is considered hate speech, because when you make fun of a person's accent that he cannot control, I don't make fun of accents from Georgia or the Midwest or Minnesota. We all, and life's like a box of chocolates. And if you still think I shouldn't say you should criticize me for my accent, why don't you go fuck yourself? Canadians are not as polite as you think. If you think you don't like my accent, either leave a comment to be banned, or fuck off and don't come back. Do we understand each other? The 99% that are respectful of everybody else, I love you. You are part of the family here. But if you're not want to be part of the family, because your fellow Americans do not, a real American doesn't make fun of an accent. A real American says, well, I didn't agree. That's how Americans should behave. It's different than saying I don't agree, and the fact is, well, I like what you're saying, but I don't like your accent. That means you're full of shit. Anyway, take it as you come. That's my rant, end rant of as part of one of the strangest episodes of the first season of Star Trek TNG. Have a good one. Bye.